Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast with your host, Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to have you back. We've got a really good show today for you. Today, I want to talk to you about some of the biggest complaints that I get, the most frequent things that come to me as a business coach to help people in their careers or help people in their businesses. So, have you ever had a situation where you're working in an organization, maybe this has even happened to you too, where people work really, really hard. They're really, really good at what they do, and they make sacrifices, they work hard, they are working overtime, and they just do what it takes to get the job done. Those people are your go-to people. You go to them all the time. You depend on them. They're loyal, they're faithful. And as a leader, as a manager, you try to take care of those people because you want to keep those people. You want to make sure you are doing everything that in your power to take care of them. So what do? You eventually promote them. Then they get promoted into a supervisor position, a manager position, and all of a sudden things start changing. What allowed the go-to person to be successful one day, where everybody loved them, everybody counted on them, they could do no wrong, they did everything right, and they were heroes in the organization. Now all of a sudden, in a new position, a higher level position, the expectations are different and they aren't performing at the same standard. Things may not go well. And so they start getting stressed. They start getting frustrated. The supervisors over these people start getting frustrated, wondering what's going on. Our guy, our go-to person who used to be awesome is now struggling. What is going on? What's causing this issue? And it goes back to good intentions of trying to take care of a superstar employee, good intentions to try to do something positive with that person so they can continue to grow and evolve and have a great career, move up the corporate ladder, so to speak. But the problem is they're above their skills, they're above their training, they're above their qualifications. Sometimes in this fast-paced, busy world, in fact, most of the time, what happens is they don't get trained, they don't get mentored, they don't get coached, and so they blindly go into something ill-prepared for that next level role. And so what do? They go back to what used to get them recognition, what used to get them hero treatment and being the go-to person and the recognition and the praise and all the things that came with that. And they lean back on those things because that's what they know. That's what they're conditioned to do. That's what got them all of the accolades up to that point, and it doesn't work. And so what happens? What do? Once you get stuck in that situation, what are your options? So today, I want to walk you through those types of things and how you can better navigate for that. And so, because if you don't, you end up having a lot of problems. It creates when you do that to people and they're ill prepared and they aren't as consistent and as productive as they used to be, it causes stress. It causes people to lose sleep at night. They worry. They're thinking that the boss is looking down on them and they're not measuring up anymore. The coworkers around them, the people that these people supervise, also see the things going on, and they start losing trust and confidence in this new supervisor you've just promoted or a new manager you've just elevated. And so people start talking, people start losing confidence in them and their ability to lead. So then they go around them, they go talk to other managers, other supervisors, and try to get guidance and direction. And it just kind of snowballs. People start being less productive, they start working less as a team, and over time, it just deteriorates the organization to the point where they're just not effective. They're not as efficient. You've got bottlenecks in the system at that point. And as a leader, if you're not able to correct that and work with these individuals that are in these situations to help them through it, then you ultimately may have to end up moving them out of that role, which is kind of embarrassing for everybody involved. And so nobody wants that. Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to move forward and be promoted. But a lot of times, company leaders aren't setting people up for success in that process. And so I see this every day. I talk to people all the time about these things. All of the clients that I have served, there are episodes of this throughout their organization at one time or another. And so today, what I thought I would do is talk about a particular client of mine. For confidentiality purposes that I have with my clients, I'm going to call this person John. And today I want to walk you through the day in the life of John, as I met John, as I worked with John for about a year and a half, and then where John is today. And I hope this story will resonate, because this is one of the top challenges, the top problems that I think organizations face today, especially today, post-COVID, and trying to attract and retain really good, sharp talent. This is becoming more and more and more of a challenge that people are trying to deal with. And it's a hard challenge to overcome once it happens. And so let's start off with our story here. I met John a number of years ago. He had reached out to me, I think through LinkedIn. He had found me through some Google searches, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm interested in coaching, never had a coach before. Can I talk to you, learn more about what you do to see if you can help me?" So we got on a call, and immediately I noticed that John was in a really tough spot. I can just tell by the tone in his voice, the intenseness of his voice. He was feeling some pain. He was unhappy. And so we talked for about 30 to 40 minutes. And at that point, I realized what was going on, realized that he did really truly need a good executive coach to help him move. He was stuck. He was frustrated. He was losing sleep at night. He was just really in a bad place. He was a very angry and disgruntled person. And so as the story goes, John was a technical person. He was in the information technology sector. He was in a very large organization, a global organization, and he had been the go-to guy. He was the very technically savvy. He knew all the ins and the outs of computers and networks and how all that stuff works, cybersecurity, how to manage those things, administer those things, grow and scale those things as the company grew and scaled and brought on more employees. They went through a number of mergers and acquisitions, which, had to get everybody on the same page with the same technology so they can communicate and work together and bring two different companies together at the same time and working in a synergetic manner. And so he, for many, many, many years, about 15 years to be exact, John went through this process of being the expert, being the technical guru, the go-to guy, the guy that would work long hours, go to any extent to take care of people. He was a very passionate person that cared about his customers, cared about his company, and would go over and above to lead them and guide them and do the technical things they needed to do to be successful. And he was very good, highly known and well respected in the company. Everybody, had a sticky note with his name and number on it, and he was just that guy, and he liked being that guy. He loved being the go-to guy. He liked a lot of recognition. He liked getting a lot of praise. It gave him energy. It gave him just motivation to get up and go to work. He was excited to go to work. And then with the changes of the organizations over the years, he got a new boss, a new chief information officer, a CIO came into the organization. Very smart guy, but he had a different vision of the company, a different vision of the technology, how they were going to leverage technology to make more money in the business, to be more efficient in the business, and it meant a lot of changes. And so as the new leader came in and got to know people, he met John. John impressed him. John quickly became recognized by the new boss as, this go-to guy. And so about 6-7 months into it, John gets promoted into a director level role. And in this company, it's mid-level manager. He was responsible for about 5 to 6 employees. And all of a sudden, things started changing. The expectations of John started changing. He was not prepared, nor was he trained to really supervise people, manage people, understand the HR process and how to give feedbacks to his employees, how to discipline employees if they weren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, how to navigate all the administrative things that needed to happen, the reporting, all of those kind of management overhead functions. John kept reverting back to his technical skills and putting computers together for people and working on the technology and the new technologies they were bringing on and training people. And so he ended up neglecting some of his responsibilities that eventually caught up to him. And the leadership, all the way up to the CIO, were faced with the challenge of having to deal with him and manage him in a way that really wasn't best suited for him. They kind of started micromanaging him, and it caused a lot of problems. John was not the kind of person that liked to be micromanaged. He liked a lot of autonomy. He felt he was good at what he was doing, but he wasn't doing very well at the management and supervising tasks that were being done, that he was required to do. And so that meant that his upper level managers were having to do more of that with him, getting pulled into more of those things because he wasn't succeeding in those things and keeping up with the pace for which management was moving forward. And so this created a very, very tough dynamic for John. And so it spiraled. He became very angry, became very just disgruntled, bitter, confused, frustrated. And so I remember in our very first couple of sessions, our sessions were an hour and a half apiece, and John would show up and he would just be puking all over me, just angry and venting. I sat there. I remember, hey, how's it going, John? Good to see you. How's your day going? I just asked him, just to start off some conversation on our coaching call. And I'm like, how are you doing today? And he would start talking about all these problems, all these issues, all his gripes and complaints about the leadership and the management. They don't understand what's going on, and they're so disconnected. And he went on for an hour and a half, just venting. And I just sat there and I listened and I shook my head. And every once in a while I said, yeah, I understand. Yeah, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. And after the second session of him doing that, I noticed he was wearing himself out. He finally came up for air and took a breath. And I asked him, how do you feel, buddy? How do you feel that you've been able to kind of get this out of your system? And he's like, man, I actually feel better. I don't have anybody to talk to. I don't feel like anybody gets me. I don't feel like anybody's listening to me. I don't feel like I'm being set up for success. I'm lost. I'm lonely. I don't know what to do. I used to be good. I used to be great. I used to be the go-to person, and now I'm being looked down on like I'm not doing a good job. I don't understand what's going on. So I did some assessments on John. We did a DISC assessment to kind of understand his personality and what motivates him, what his skills are, what his strengths and weaknesses and stressors and energizers, and just how he makes decisions, how he thinks through problems. And I noticed some things inside of that were a little concerning. It created a thing in my mind where I just felt there was a misalignment there. He was not really prepared for what he was doing, and it showed in the DISC assessment. I also did a leadership assessment with him where I went through a litany of things to understand his background and his experience as a manager, as a supervisor, as his ability to manage budgets and inventories and people and timelines and projects and all these different things you do as a leader and a manager. And so we went through that process, and I had a really good idea of kind of where he was. And what I discovered was his leadership had maneuvered him into a position he was not truly ready for. Didn't seem like there was a whole lot of collaboration back and forth. And so John is a type A, go-getter, kick butt, take names kind of guy. And so, yeah, he's eager to learn. He's eager to make more money and have a higher paying position and a fancy business card with a nice fancy title on it. He's motivated by those things. And so while that was gratifying for the first few weeks, that soon wore off because he felt insecure. He felt a lack of confidence in himself to be able to move forward. He went from being the hero to feeling like a zero. And that's just a really bad feeling to have. It just makes you second guess yourself. It makes you just be on edge and kind of wonder, where am I and why are people thinking these things of me? How do I get out of this? Where do I go? What do I do? And he was lost. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't equipped to deal with these things. And so as I continued to work with John, he calmed down. I was able to get him to start thinking a little more rationally, be a little more open-minded to things, and kind of back off the anger and the aggression that he had. He was just angry at this company. Just felt like he was being screwed over at every turn. What we decided to do with John is create a customized personal plan for him to help him become a leader. Not a new supervisor, not just a manager, but a leader. A leader. Somebody that can influence people and motivate people. Somebody that can think more strategically. Somebody that can balance a lot of different things at one time. You know, being a leader means you have to juggle a lot of balls at one time, you know, from strategy and goals and performance indicators to budgets and forecasts and how to move the market through, a turbulent market downturn, or capitalizing on opportunities in the market, how to outdo your competition, how to think more like a business person, but really how to lead people, how to deal with challenges, how to get out in front of things. Instead of things happening to you, you can actually be more prepared to deal with them when they actually come your way. When the big waves hit on your beach, how do you deal with that? And so we put together a customized plan for John that allowed him to go through and learn how to be a leader of leaders. And that was a very powerful process for him to go through. He is somebody that's not easily changed. He's kind of stubborn. He's kind of stuck in his ways. He's very passionate, believes very much into what he thinks and what he feels and believes. And it's hard to get him to move, open up his mind to new ways of thinking. And so with John, I had to focus on how to show him how to do it. I couldn't just talk to him and talk him through leadership. I had to put programs together and show him visually what this looks like. Share stories, share tools, share resources, share different, models of problem solving and situational leadership, and all kinds of different best practices that are proven, and show him and take him through those things very methodically. And over time, I saw a transformation with him. He started becoming himself. He started joking around a little bit more. He started getting his confidence back. He started engaging differently. He started asking bigger, more meaningful questions in this process. John is an amazing leader. He's an amazing person that went through a really tough time. And so I taught him how to manage his resources. I taught him how to lead his people. And there's really, and I broke it down in very simple terms for him, because simplicity is a leader's best friend. And so there are really 3 keys of leadership that I taught him. One, how to motivate and influence people to do things. Even though they may not understand it, they may not like it, they may not agree with it, you still have to get people to move from point A to point B in leadership. And your job as a leader is to find out ways to motivate them, to get them to do their absolute best and be excited about it. Sell it as if it was their own idea. Another thing I taught him was leaders grow new leaders. And what we discovered through this process is that, John was not setting the best example. How he was interacting with his leadership, his outburst of anger and frustration, how he was responding to those things did not set a really good example of people around him that he was supposed to be supervising and managing. That was very, very powerful. We talked about how as a leader you need to think about yourself as like a fish in a fishbowl. Everybody's watching everything you do, everything you say, everything matters. Everything's being watched. And people, just your tone in your voice to the facial expressions you may have. As a leader, everybody's looking to you and is modeling off of you. And what he found is he was really struggling to put himself above himself, to set the example as a leader and think differently about how to engage these new challenges he wasn't used to dealing with. And so we went through leadership. We went through how to delegate, how to follow up. We went through priority management, time management. People say, "Oh, I'm really good at managing my time," and he pushed back and he's like, "Oh, I'm really good. Everything I do is on my calendar." And I said, "Okay, great, but how do you know what's on your calendar is the priority? How do you know you're even working on the right things every day that's really matters the most?" And so taught him about priority management. We talked about executive presence, setting the example. We talked about communication. I taught him how to communicate in different environments with different people. There's a concept called omnidirectional communications where you have to communicate differently up to your boss, differently than you communicate down to your employees, differently than you communicate with your peers and partners out there. Omnidirectional communications. He had never learned that before. He's a master of it now. But you have to think and be very intentional about those kinds of things, or you get lost in all of that. I also taught him how to adapt to different situations and different kinds of people. When he engaged his boss that he didn't agree with in many ways and had a lot of issues with him, he didn't adapt to that boss very well. He didn't adapt to some other people very well. And I used, tools like DISC assessments to break that down in showing him how his DISC profile needs to adapt to other people's DISC profiles. The whole concept of treating people how they need to be treated. He was thinking about it all from his personal perspective. Well, I see things this way. I feel this way. Therefore, I'm going to project myself in this manner because I think that's going to get me what I'm looking for. And actually, it was counterproductive for him. It caused problems and caused waves for him. And so that in and of itself was a very, very powerful session. I think he learned more about people and leading people just out of those sessions alone, in addition to the other things we went through, like, leadership and your leadership style and your executive presence and your vision as a leader and how you communicate as a leader. All those things are important, but how to adapt to different people and different environments, because the world's fast-paced and it's complicated. And if you can't recognize, the situation you're in as things evolve and how to adapt to that, man, people really, really struggle to succeed as successfully as possible in that situation. So I ended up spending a year and a half coaching this young man. Got to know him really, really well. At the end of this process, he was calm, he was cool, he was confident. He was hitting on all cylinders. He had actually overcome his challenges as a new supervisor, a new manager, a new leader. And he transformed into almost a different kind of person. People would look at him and say, "Man, what a difference. He is completely different. What's going on with him? How did he change? How did he overcome this?" I mean, he was really, really struggling. He was on the verge of being fired. And so there's a good ending to this story. John ended up, in his personal life, he had neglected a lot of things in his personal life. He was married, didn't have any kids though, and he was at a point where he was having so many challenges at work in the beginning when I first met him, that he was struggling to keep up. So he worked longer hours. He poured his heart and soul into work, and he wasn't very balanced, which caused problems in his marriage and his friendships and his family life. He hadn't seen his family in a long time. Well, at the end of this process, he became a leader. He changed and adapted in wonderful ways, but he ended up reconnecting with his family. He ended up reconnecting with, his mom who was sick, who needed him. And he was in a better place to support her. Then he sends me a picture of an ultrasound. Him and his wife had been trying for years to get pregnant. And after all this was said and done, they ended up getting pregnant. They now have a beautiful baby girl, and he, just going through the process of having a baby, changed John in and of itself. And so I tell you this story today because this is a very common story that a lot of people go through. A lot of people feel, a lot of people experience, whether they're the employee going through this or somebody up the chain in the management, that's an upper level management that's trying to deal with this. This is real. This impacts people's lives in major ways. These are easily preventable mistakes if you just think through how you're conducting your business, how you are creating the next round of leaders and developing a succession plan to make sure that people are prepared going through the process. John was ill prepared. I think the leadership had good intentions, but were busy and had a lot of things going on, and they just did not usher this the right way. Well, John was lucky that he was thinking about things, knew things weren't right, happened to reach out and get help. If you are out there today and you're going through some struggles, you're one of these people that was a go-to person that was put in a tough position that you're ill-equipped to handle, not trained to handle. If you're a upper-level management dealing with somebody that you're trying to take care of, have good heart, good intentions, do not just willy-nilly put people in serious management roles that aren't prepared, because what made them successful as a go-to technician doesn't make them successful as a manager, as a supervisor, or any other role. And so you have to carefully think through that. And so I would say get help. If you don't have an HR team or groups of people that can help you assess people and really understand where they're at and see where the gaps are between where they are developmentally and what the expectations of the role is you're trying to put them in, get clarity on those things before you pull the trigger and cause a lot of problems in the company, cause a lot of frustration and time and money trying to deal with things the hard way. John was lucky that he had enough, forethought to think about this and reach out to me as a coach and get help, get training, get expertise, get advice, get mentorship, get, all of the tools and resources that we were able to provide them. Those things are out there. All you have to do is look for them. If you need help, you need access to resources, feel free to reach out to our organization, soarhighercoaching.com. We're happy to help you as much as we can or point you in the right direction. We're not maybe right for everybody all the time, but if we're not, we'll point you in the right direction. But this is a kind of a sad story that turned into a happy story. This story had a good ending. John ended up, having, restoring his balance of life with his family. He's much happier. He's got a new daughter now. He's spending more time with his extended family members. and has moved on into some other management roles and is now, years later, in a VP level role. I want you to think about this story. If it resonates with you, feel free to reach out to us in the show notes and send us your thoughts, your concerns. If we can reach out and help you in any way, feel free to do that at soarhighercoaching.com. And I hope this episode kind of touches on some heartstrings and helps you think through some of these things a little bit differently and how to maybe go through these in a better, more effective way. And so appreciate your time today. Always great to spend time with the audience. Always love getting your feedback. This is some feedback that I've received and following up with you to hopefully help you with tools that you may or may not have at your disposal. So that's all for today's show. Look forward to talking with you next week as we talk about some more leadership and training things that folks are working on going forward. So talk to you next week.